All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first ever monthly podcast. First ever monthly podcast right here on All Gloves Off Sports Media. We are going to do Average Joes with Sports Jobs. So let me explain, right? We've got Travis here with us. We'll get into him as everything goes on and as far as this interview goes. But here's the thing here's what the concept of this show is going to be. I believe that you and I are scouring YouTube and the internet and Patreon and all kinds of different stuff for great sports content. So we here at All Gloves Off Sports Media have given our stamp of approval to some things, and we want to talk to those people so that we can introduce them to you. And Trav here is one of them that we are going to do. In fact, he is, of course, the first one on episode one. And as I was telling him off air, everybody's going to remember their first time. We're just going to hope it's going to be memorable. All right, ladies and gentlemen. But, not a whole lot of fanfare. You see the graphic is not really moving in back of us or anything. I decided to strip this down a little bit and just talk to the person I'm trying to interview. But we can't go completely stripped down. We got to at least do some music in the background. So, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. All right, so we got Trav E, right? He is our guest. We'll talk more to him and about him, and maybe he'll even talk more about himself than what we want. But anyway, as it keeps going, we'll just figure all of this out, right? So I'm not going to lie to anybody. We've got some scripted questions that we're going to make sure we go through. And for those of you who are like, wow, I'd love to be on that show. I want to put myself out there more. I've got a sports job. Simply direct message me. The link is right there underneath the name. You can go to All Gloves Off SM on X, and you can do that as well. Travis, before we get going here, buddy, what is your social media link so that we can get to you as well, bud?
Well, you can find me on X at BeardedEnigma25. Right? Pretty simple. And then really anything else is going to be at Cheap Pop Society. On YouTube, type in Cheap Pop Society. There's also an X that's Cheap Pop Society. And that's really what I stick to because I'm old. But,
well, you're not as old as the other guy in this screen, but okay, whatever.
It's all right. But yeah, that's where you can find us. And it's really easy, actually. Just type in cheappopsociety.com. Takes you straight to YouTube. Click that subscribe, get that notification bell, and we're off to the races.
All right, buddy. So I know from listening to your podcast that you currently reside in West Virginia.
Yep.
Trav, were you born there?
I was born in Maryland, but essentially here it was just across the pond, as we say, just across the river. Okay. So essentially, all but the first month of my life, I've lived in West Virginia. So that's 36 years we've been here.
You were calling yourself old at 36. My age begins with a 5. Calm down over there. So
I feel a little bit older. We'll get into why here in a little bit.
Okay. Give me an example of living there in West Virginia and how that's influenced you going forward in your life.
Well, believe it or not, it takes more than it doesn't take more than my family to make a full set of teeth, right? I think we all have our own full set of teeth, but no, there's stereotypes. But as far as I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, really. I mean, growing up was great here. I think living in West Virginia really teaches you about community, right? Okay. It's a lot of, we might go at each other, but at the end of the day, we got each other's backs. We're mountaineers through and through. And with that comes a certain amount of resiliency, right? Because it's not the most high class place in the world, meaning, financially, we don't have a lot of millionaires or anything like that, at least not in the part where I'm at. So we know how to get by and we know how to help each other out. So I'm proud to be from a place where we help our neighbors and we do what we need to get by. And, I think through that, I think that's where my work ethic came from. Obviously parents as well, but we live in a place where we got to have some kind of work ethic just to make sure that we're putting food on the table. and that's probably everywhere right now, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, it probably is. But I understand what you're meaning. It's a little different. We won't call it the backwoods, but I mean it's you guys still know each other. Like I live in a community right now. I've lived here for a year. I've seen my neighbors a couple of times outside while I'm getting my trash and stuff like that, but I've never knocked on anyone's door. I've never taken a casserole to anybody's house or anything like that, right? To where it used to be back in the older days that I can remember, even my parents and grandparents doing, way back when. So that's kind of what you're saying, right? That's still the way it is where you're from.
But for the most part, I mean, we know everybody in town. There's nobody's. You're in everybody's business, and everybody knows your business whether they want it or not. So, or at least they think they do.
Right. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but that's just where we're at, right?
Yep.
Okay, I understand. Now I wanted to find out a little bit about where you lived at. So you're a big time wrestling fan. What drew you to wrestling? What, maybe 30 some years ago?
Yeah, actually, it's been essentially my entire life, and it's funny because way back before my memory, which doesn't take much because I have a memory of a goldfish with CTE, but you look at, like, if I ask my parents, it was my grandparents, I'd be in my little bouncer chair or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
if it came on the TV, whether it was at our house or at my grandparents' house, I would just kind of stop and watch it. It's funny to even think about, but other kids are stopping for like Barney and whatnot, but throw Hulk Hogan on the TV or whoever, and I'm hooked. And as far as what first drew me in, I think a lot of, if I think back to when I was a kid, like Sting, right? The colors, neon Sting, all that kind of stuff, and then just
Mm-hmm.
and I guess what draws anybody into any sports, like the physical aspect of it, when you're just a little kid. So just the larger than life characters, I think, is, thinking back, that had to be what it was. But my fandom, again, it goes further back than my memory does.
Understood. Uh, what was your first wrestling item that you either wore, like a shirt or a hat or something like that, or something that was bought for you or that you bought for yourself that you were just obsessed with? Did you have one of those items back as a kid?
Yes, I did. So as far as the first wrestling item, I don't know exactly, but the one that really connected me with wrestling, it was the early, or no, late 90s. We went to a local show here, and who was on there other than Mankind, right? He came out as Mankind. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, the local promoter here, for whatever reasons, they had ties. He had ties with Mick Foley, and he came in every now and again, and it was him versus Mick Foley, or Mankind at the time. He had his brown get up on, in a barbed wire match, right? No ropes, barbed wire. And so it was intermission, and I had bought a little Mankind action figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't in the box or anything. It was like one of those secondhand things they set up at the show, and so it was cool. But of course, I had it in my hand when I walked up to get a picture with him, and I'll never forget. Mick Foley looks at me, and he says, "Let me see that, buddy." Seeing that I had his action figure, he took his Sharpie, colored the teeth in, and he handed it back to me. He said, "That's better." So just having that, even at that young age, you're like, okay, that's cool. That doesn't, like, not everybody gets that,
Right.
and a lot of that is, if you ever heard the story of why I named it Sheep Hop Society, it's kind of stems from that story. Mick Foley going the extra mile for a fan that he didn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so basically now you're a fan for life. You're hooked now, right?
Yeah.
Just, I mean, you may as well have just, whether you put the fish back in the pond or not, you were still hooked, right?
Yeah. Helpless.
Yes. So is it? Well, we'll get into that in a second. Let me do a couple other things here in between. So for those of us who love wrestling, and honestly, I'm right there on. I don't know if I'm on your spectrum, because I know you paid for WrestleMania. I refused. So maybe you're a little higher on the echelon scale than what I am. Can't stand ESPN, but that's a story for another day. For those of us who do love wrestling, there are several types of wrestling. So I'd like to talk about a few and get kind of your opinion on them. Who is your favorite heel of all time, Trav?
So my favorite heel or bad guy of all time, personally, and it's one that a lot of people just kind of look at me and like, why? Triple H. It was just the age I was growing up, and he had the McMahon Helmsley era, and just was the bad guy that was able to hang with anybody, but also he would do whatever he needed to get the title, and that kind of, it was heel 101. But I loved it, and I that was who I kind of fell in love with.
Now, when you say heel 101, let's talk to our fans out there for a moment. I understand what that means. They might not. Tell me your definition of heel 101.
So, for those that don't know, a heel is the bad guy, meaning if it's somebody that basically does everything that you can't stand because life's all about them and they want to get ahead. So you think of a heel, you think of what he was doing at the time. It was stuff like cheap shots, right? Letting people interfere on his behalf, even kind of politicking your way through storyline into different things to benefit you, right?
Okay.
Essentially a narcissist, I guess would be a good way to put it. But heel 101 is just doing those little things and doing it well, right? When later in my life, and we'll get into, that was part of my repertoire.
Okay. So a lot of times, we don't want to get into that too much because we're going to get into it a little bit in a bit. But I've often heard, and I kind of like the behind the scenes stuff in the wrestling business just as much as I do what happens on the actual mat, right? So I've often heard less is more. I don't know how many times I've heard The Undertaker say less is more. Can you tell me what that means and how that equates to you and your kind of wrestling fandom? We'll get into exactly what it means here in a moment, but let's preview it a little bit, Trav.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Less is more is something that from the time you start training until probably you retire, you're going to hear, right? And at some point it switches because you're the one telling the people that less is more. But essentially what it means is you got to think of wrestling. Think of each match as in a psychological way, right? Think of what's called wrestling psychology. You want it to be a roller coaster so that you can hook people in, you get them to the edge of their seats, you let them sit down for a minute, and you get them back up, because you can't keep the excitement level up here the entire time, right? You're going to wear the people out and you're just going to lose them. But less is more doesn't have to be big move after big move after big move. We slow it down. We show our reactions in our face for the pain, right? We let the anticipation build nice and slow. You can maybe take one or two bumps, which fall down, get slammed, whatever you want to call it, and get the same reaction.
Something that hurts, right?
Right. It get the same reaction as somebody that thinks they got to climb up a ladder and jump off doing a 450. If you do it right and you play to the crowd and you pull them in and you get them right there on the edge of their seat and you hit that move, or the good guy comes back with a hope spot and then you take him back down, right? It's simple and it's lovely, and when it's done right, it's chef's kiss.
All right. Hey, I like that. I like that a lot. So, you've told us your favorite heel. Let's look at the other side. As you've already said, heel's the bad guy in any kind of wrestling faction. It's the same term throughout. What about what they like to call the good guy or the face? Who is your favorite face of all time? And then I'm going to ask you a secondary question that we didn't put in the notes. I'm going to ask you who is the best face right now. So do me all time and then do right now for me.
All right. My personal favorite babyface of all time is Sting. And I think a lot of kids my age grew up with that. And I'd already mentioned him without even really thinking about it. Just in the beginning, the colors and everything, that's what drew me to him. But then he became the guy that was always standing up for the right thing, right? I don't know that he was ever really even a bad guy through his career, maybe 2 or 3 different times for a short period. But to me, that was my favorite babyface. And I've never been much of a babyface guy. Like, people talk about Hulk Hogan and Stone Cold and The Rock. Like, they were never really my people. I always had, it was Sting, but opposite of Hogan, I was a Flair guy, right? Opposite of Austin and Rock, I was a Triple H guy, right? So that's just kind of where I fell. And I don't know if I'm just an a-hole or what, but that was just always kind of what I enjoyed story wise was the bad guy. But yeah,
Now,
Sting, my favorite.
I don't know if you know this or not, but you can't mention Ric Flair without giving us the woo. So go ahead. I want you to try at least.
Oh
Give
my
us.
gosh.
Oh yeah, come on, Trav. Give us a woo, because by golly, I'm going to say this clip, and we're gonna put this on social media right now. Go ahead, Trav.
Woo! Yeah,
Okay,
that's all I got.
that's about all I got. He says.
Puberty does not allow me to do that anymore.
Okay, understood. Oh man. All right. So what about right now, Trav? Who is the guy who plays the best baby face right now?
I think you got to go with kind of the quintessential like old school baby face, and to me that's Cody Rhodes. That's what he's trying to go with, and he's kind of out there, giving everybody handshakes, hugs, and all that kind of thing, which is really what babyface is. Do what you can to be the good guy for kids to look up to, and all that. So he does that, and I know that we're kind of to the point where, well, there's a lot of people who want to see him turn into a bad guy because they're tired of the same old shtick or whatever. But
yeah,
I said Hill 101 earlier. I mean, right now he's baby 101. So. And we know wrestling eventually that'll come to pass, and he'll have his run as a heel essentially, more than likely. So, but I think right now he's doing it well. He left WWE and he came back and he got to where he is as the face of the company for the last couple years. And now that he's on top, just like it's human nature, right? All right, we've seen this. What's next? And especially in a era as far as humanity goes, where it's instant gratification, right?
Right.
Along with that comes we have a hard time enjoying what's now because we want to know what's next, and he's kind of in limbo with that, I think. But it's a long-winded answer for Cody Rhodes.
Well, no, it's not a long-winded answer, because I'm going to jump off of it in a couple spots here. I thought he was going to turn heel. I mean, again, I didn't watch WrestleMania because I refused, and again, that's another story for another day. But YouTube gives me tons and tons of highlights, and I can pretty much watch the show without paying $30 a month, and then God only knows what else you got to pay for too. So I thought maybe he was going to come back on this first SmackDown as a heel, but and I don't know about you, Travis, but I can't stand it when any wrestling promotion gives us something and then expects us to forget it. And I'll give you my big example. Kane is my big example, right? Kane couldn't talk. All of a sudden, Kane goes away for 6 months and he comes back and, hey, what is this? Kane can talk all of a sudden? I mean, were we supposed to forget about the years in front of that where he couldn't talk, and he put the little microphone to his neck and, my name is Kane stuff and all that, right? I can't stand it when they do that. Was that just a tease for us to say we can do this whenever we want? Or do you think they were going to do it and they backed out?
As far as the heel turn?
Yes.
I think they're in an era right now, and I keep using that word. That must be Triple H. I think they're in a place right now where they want to throw out as many red herrings as possible, because they know that as far as the crowd goes, they're more in tune than ever, just because of stuff like podcasts and, things with X and Facebook, or however you kind of communicate with each other, where everybody's just posting everything and their opinion and all that kind of thing. So they want to keep everybody on their feet, I think. And sometimes I think that hinders the product a little bit, because to me, the best way to go was have Cody turn heel and even have him do it maybe the SmackDown before WrestleMania and then drop the title to Randy Orton, because you get the 15 time with Randy Orton, right? And then they go on to, I guess the next thing's Money in the Bank, right? That could have been a rematch, and you could easily had Cody get it back as the bad guy, whatever. But to me, that was what I saw playing out. Regardless of who won, I thought they would finally pull on Cody being a heel, especially because he teased like in his podcast or whatever that he didn't want to be a heel, and I'm like, okay, so that's the plan for it's coming, right?
Right.
It got pushed down the road, but as far as the Randy Orton thing goes, I don't know why we had to have Jelly Roll and Pat McAfee in there. So the whole thing got kind of convoluted. So
yeah, again, kind of another story for another day. But I think there's 3 letters as to what they why they did that, and it wasn't RK&O, it was TK&O.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll discuss that probably later on, but not right the moment, sir. We got a lot of other stuff to get to, and I want to talk about you. So you have been a part of a small wrestling promotion in the past. So tell me a little bit about that company and your involvement with it, Trav.
So I've been involved with the Elite. That was the name of the company that trained me, right? So my involvement there was pretty simple. Just show up and do what they said, basically, to pay your dues
Okay.
and be a part of the training. It was, a couple times a week, but then it was also before each show, and this is how we set up, and this is the way the entrance goes, and so you learned everything. You're not just sitting there like some people can just show up and get in a match, right? There's plenty of wrestlers on the indies that have never really been trained, or that, trained for a couple hours and then they're put out there because they didn't really get technically trained by somebody that was a certified trainer, and they don't understand that you stay and you put up the ring, or you help to take down the ring, like the respect aspect of it. Before you get in the ring, you wipe your shoes, all that kind of thing. So you can tell who's classically trained and who's not. But as far as Elite goes, that was my training, and it was a little bit old school. And not to get in the weeds too much here, but I say that meaning like nobody came in the locker room with you. You played kayfabe as much as you could. Uh, you if you had a name come in and work at the promotion, you didn't go up and ask them for a picture and autograph and all that kind of stuff, because that's what it called marking out, right? So you just
Mm-hmm.
tried to be professional, and so nothing wrong with that. You miss out sometimes on pictures you'd like to have, but the memory of being backstage with them is, I'd argue to say, a little bit better than having a picture with them. But other than you can't post your memories online to get a bunch of likes, but that's not what it's like anyway, or not what it's about anyway. But
Okay.
yeah, so that was that, and I wrestled for him for a long time, and then the other one would have been ATCW. They I was there from the time they started in 2011 until they closed their doors, and that was just last year. And that was kind of the swan song for me as far as my active excuse me, active part of my career. And with them, it started off as just being a tag team with my partner, and then once he kind of moved on, it was just do what I find places to belong, and we were in a faction. So really just a worker up until the last couple years, and then it was my opinion meant something. They would ask me maybe something about what what do you think about this order of matches, or what would you like to do for a finish, or where could you see this story going, or do you have an idea of who you want to work next, right? That kind of thing, which is really a veteran. That's the sign of respect from the promoter. And he was, as far as respect goes, he was one of the best. So
Okay, so let's talk about your character for a moment. Now, first of all, are you one of these guys that's going to get upset with me when I say your character? Do you look at yourself as more than a character?
I'm not gonna get upset about that at all. No, the character, the gimmick of Tarvin is very simple. Just I want to say natural heel is kind of the thing I try to play there, is that he's gonna do whatever he can to get ahead, right? And that was
Mm-hmm.
not really anything that changed all the way through my active career. Was there'd be times where the crowd would cheer me, but I didn't really change up a whole lot. So it was, when I say heel 101, you can do stuff like call the call the crowd names, or you're trying to play a chicken kind of hill where you're just running away from stuff. But that evolved a little bit. But as far as the character, he was just a cocky guy that would do whatever he could to get ahead. So hard to say character, more than just maybe more character than gimmick, actually, right? So
Okay.
really gimmicked up. I was the diamond in the rough at one point. So I guess that would kind of be my gimmick. The the big thing, and people that know me can say this, way back before MJF, I had a shirt that said "Better Than You." It's big purple and orange letters on the front, purple outline and orange, and fast forward years later, here comes MJF with the better than you, and it stuff. And so,
yeah, so he stole that from you. That's what you're trying to say. He went to one of those shows that you were at, and he stole that from you. That's what it is.
I'd like to think that, but I'm sure that that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, as far as I wasn't really gimmicked up saying that this is the guy, whatever. I was just a guy from Lincoln, Nebraska that was looking to get ahead in any way possible.
All right, so then you've already kind of answered this for me, I think. So as a talent in the promotions that you were in, did you like playing a heel more than you did the face?
So the backstory there is in my debut match, I was on the heel team. It was a 6-man tag, and it had Nikolai Volkov in it, a WWE Hall of Famer. And
okay.
So 6-man tag, they do their thing, and this is my first match ever. I get in the ring and turn my back immediately, and I join the Russian. Right, they labeled me Turncoat Tarvin at that point. So, from about 30 minutes into my actual active wrestling career, all the way up through to probably the last 2 years of it, I was a bad guy. I was a heel everywhere I went. The only time there was one instant where I was on tour with Big Time Wrestling when they had Ric Flair with them, and it was in Pennsylvania. They had me play it was right outside of Pittsburgh. They had me play a baby face, or had me be a baby face. But other than that, up until, like I said, last 2 years, it was a heel. So I almost have to say that that's what I prefer because it's what I know. And I always said that I don't want to be anything else, but there is something to being a baby face and people chant your name and you come out and they're all excited and, they're wearing your stuff. And there's something about that's cool. Maybe after 11 or 12 years of just being the bad guy and everybody, yelling at you and wishing death on you and, getting actual death threats and that kind of thing, it was a welcome change. But then right before the end of the run there, right before the end of the career, I went back to heel. So I turned myself back to the good old days, I guess. So yeah.
Okay.
To answer your question, I prefer heel. I like being a baby too. I just like to be a part of the show.
Okay, understood. So now there's a lot of things, like we were just talking with the NFL draft and stuff, myself, Cheese on the Lights Out Sports podcast. You guys can get right here on All Gloves Off Sports Media. There are different positions in football, obviously. If you're really good at that position, you can make a lot more money. Like if you're a really good quarterback, you can make a lot more money than if you were a really good cornerback.
Yeah.
Do you think that with Cody Rhodes, and kind of connecting all these dots here for a minute, does he prefer to be the heel because he can does he prefer to be the face because he can make more money and merch sales and stuff like that? Do you think there's a connection there with certain wrestlers, maybe not just Cody?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even if you look on the indies, like where I was, in front of a couple hundred people, the faces made more because they went out, they sold merchandise, right? The kids wanted the good guy, the one they cheered for in the match. They wanted their merchandise. Mm-hmm. The Hills, we would kind of slingshot that, right? We could make the baby look as good as we wanted the baby to look. And then they would end up selling out of stuff or whatever. But it's a very old school way of looking at it. Actually, the face would do that, right? Coming from a place where you don't get guaranteed money. Right. 100%. That's the way to look at it if that's what you're going for. But even up on the WWE, I mean, you get your merchandise sales. I'm sure they get a nice little chunk of it. So yeah, mm-hmm. I think definitely would have a little bit to do with it. But also on top of that, cool heels will sell a lot of merchandise too, right? So it almost more so than ever, I'd say, since the NWO came along. And I say more so than ever, that's been 30 some years ago, but ever since NWO came along, there's a lot of cool heels that sell merchandise. So if you're lucky enough to find yourself in that way, right, you can go out and say whatever you want to people and you're still selling stuff. But yeah, babyface definitely theoretically would make a lot more money, and that's, if that's what you're after, that's where you want to stay.
Right. So you said earlier that you traveled every weekend. You went up and down the coast as far as that part went. But did you do that because you had to do that in order to get halfway decent money? Or did you just enjoy the wrestling business that much where you were okay putting your body on the line every weekend in order to make 200 people happy?
So, and no, I think the way I looked at it rubbed some people the wrong way. I I did it strictly because I wanted to do it. There's a lot of people that are gonna go there with the sole, like, the only thing driving them is that they're gonna get to WWE no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, that was never something that I thought was gonna happen. Would have been great if it happened? Yeah. Did I wrestle my matches like I thought it could happen? I tried, right? I did what I could, but to me, it was always just a passion thing. I'm doing this because I love it, right? I'm not going to sit here and argue over wins and losses. Whatever the boss wants me to do, I'm going to go out there and do it to the best of my ability, you know? So I didn't travel because it was better money, right? Traveling in the indies usually costs you money, right? We
Yes.
had 3 of us in the car and we hopped in the car and off we go for 2 or 3 days, you know, and the payday might cover the hotel if you're lucky, right? Splitting it 3 ways, you can get the hotel and a little bit of the food paid for, but, you know, anybody that's doing it and says they're doing it for the money, that might only work if you're coming off of TV and you're charging X amount of money for an appearance and that's gonna actually pay for your hotel and all that kind of stuff, but,
Mm-hmm.
um, for most people, it's just that it's a necessity, right? They have to do it to get their name out there to get to where they wanna be, but for me, it was always just, that's what I wanna do, and I would, if I didn't wanna take it or I couldn't take it, then I couldn't, but yeah.
So did you as an indie wrestler like it when other so you mentioned earlier, I believe it was Nikita Koloff, right, that you were involved in a match with.
Nikolai
Did
Volkov.
Nikolai Volkov. Okay, I'm sorry. Did you like it when those kind of people came around? Because I'm assuming they took most of the money that the event drew in. So then here's the scraps off to the side that the rest of you little peon wrestlers have to divide up. Or did you like it because he's going to come in and he's going to bring more eyes to us, and instead of there being 200 people in this venue, there's going to be 450. Talk to me about those different dynamics.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever looked at it, to my knowledge, of like, "Oh, here comes this guy, he's gonna get all the money." They come in with a set fee, and usually when the promoters are gonna pay that much money, it's because they know they're gonna make it back plus some, right? And you as a
Mm-hmm.
talent, you're our pay never suffered because of who they brought in, right? Our pay was the same as if he wasn't there. But what does get helped, like you alluded to, if normally we have 200 people there and we're bringing in a name and now we're going to have 1,000 people there, right? Bring more t-shirts,
Okay.
bring more 8x10s because you're going to sell more. So that was, if you looked at it that way, that would have been the twofold, because yes, more money, it's great, but also you get to learn from somebody that's been there, that's done it. And I've been on shows with Kurt Angle, uh, Flair, Rhino, Shane Douglas, a bunch of people, and I don't like the name drop, but getting to wrestle with a Sanjay Dutt who had been there and done things and now works for WWE as a
Mm-hmm.
agent. Abyss, right? Abyss
Yeah.
chokeslammed me into thumbtacks. Him and Tommy Dreamer, right? So people that are now where they need to be, but I got to learn from them, albeit just a match. But I learned more in one match and talking about it afterwards a lot of times than I would with a year's worth of matches with just other guys that are just like me on the indies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's beneficial big time. Uh, but to have somebody like a Kurt Angle say, "Hey, I like what you're doing in the ring," and that kind of thing, it's a it can be an ego boost, but it's definitely, to me, it was humbling because I I would have never thought that he'd have took the time to watch the match, let alone, have a little bit of a critique about it and tell you what you did, because you can tell when somebody hasn't really watched it and they're just like, "Oh yeah, good job out there."
Right.
Or, "Hey, that was a good job. I didn't get to see the whole thing, but what I saw, you did XYZ. Maybe not, maybe we won't do this, but this is what you did good." And, for names to come in and do that means a lot. and not everybody's like that, but I can't think honestly of any name that I've seen that I didn't enjoy talking to. So
But the problem with that too is those are just what we call in the business. Well, I shouldn't say we in the business. Not like I'm involved in the business. Just you are. I just know a lot of this stuff because I've been a fan for so long. But those are called one-offs, right? He's going to come in. He's going to do one match. If you're involved with him, okay. But there's no room there to tell any kind of story or anything like that. You just walk out with Kurt Angle. Or you just walk out with Shane Douglas on the other side of the ring. You have a match. It's over. It's done. You're never going to see him again, more than likely. So where were you at as far as like the storytelling aspect of wrestling? Do you like short term? Do you like the long term storytelling? Do you even like those one off matches to where that's all I'm going to do and we have to produce magic here for the next 20 minutes?
So as far as before I get to the question, as far as the one off stuff, big names like a Kurt Angle, Ric Flair, that kind of thing, those usually are one offs. But like Tommy Dreamer, Shane Douglas, Luke Gallows, those kind of people that some might be fresh off of TV, but that everybody knows who they are. Tommy Dreamer and Luke Gallows were actually our heavyweight champion at one point. So, we can build stories around them. It's not probably going to be long term, right? You're talking probably a 6-month arc at best. But so you can have that short term storytelling where you're going to have fans coming because they're invested, and here's a guy from TV, right? Overall, I prefer long-term storytelling because I think it allows more emotion to sink into it. You get to see the full development of how each character handles what they're going through, and just allows you to do more. Short term, you're looking more at somebody's mad and now we're going to go out and have a match and then it's over, right? Long term, that to me, a long term means you're going to have one match and then something goes wrong and then you're going to go out, whoever lost wants a second match, and then you're going to have a rubber match, and then you might end up having that's where to me that's where the gimmick matches come in, right? Hardcore matches or cage matches, Hell in a Cell match, that kind of thing. It's more apt for long term. And old school, you wouldn't see a Hell in a Cell just to have a Hell in a Cell, right? It was the end of a feud.
Yeah,
right?
It has to be a payoff for it.
Right. And somewhere along the line, that stopped being a thing to where it was more about the match, right? You had a show called Hell in a Cell, a pay-per-view or PLE, whatever you want to call it. So the psychology of just how feuds build, right, kind of dwindled over time as well. But yeah, to me, long term is best because you get the most out of it. If you have the right story, it's going to bring people.
So when you were doing this, and I'm sorry, did I go ahead?
And just one last thought here, it might be one of those things where it's good to have a combo, right? The whole thing with wrestling is it's a smorgasbord that's good for everybody, right? You're not going to like every single thing that's on a show, but something that you hated might have been somebody else's favorite part of the show. So you have some short-term storytelling, you have some one-off matches, and you have some long-term, and you figure out where to weave it in there, and then you get your roller coaster through the whole thing. Because I don't think a lot of people realize, there's psychology in setting up a match, but there's also a psychology in setting up the show, right? Match order, that kind of thing. So it helps when you have a whole bunch of everything for everybody, and not everything can be in a long-term story.
Right. So let me give you an example from current WWE TV that I would point to. I can't stand the fact that R-Truth and Damian Priest had the tag titles because there was nothing to build, nothing. It was like, okay, we're just gonna throw you guys in the ring and see what happens, right? And then here's the straps. I don't particularly like that kind of concept. I mean, I know, maybe they're just like, we got to put you guys on TV and we need to find something for you guys to do. And creative doesn't have anything for you. So let's just smash the two of you together and throw you out there and see what the crowd thinks. Maybe we'll go with that. But that's kind of what I'm meaning by, the short-term, long-term thing. And then also I wanted to get this from you, Trav. It's got to be hard for you guys in a territorial type of promotion and expect people to travel up and down with you, right? So then isn't long-term storytelling kind of hard to do because people don't travel with you and don't see those live shows all the time?
And so, and that's a good point, because it's really hard as an indie promotion to have stories, right? It's a lot easier now than ever because of social media, and you can go live on whatever platform you're on or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
you're having one show a month in a lot of these indies. So you're looking at month after month, and believe it or not, I could tell you 80% of the people that were going to show up, right? Over those years of working at like the two companies I talked about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I was looking forward to seeing some of the fans. Like, I knew where the one guy was going to sit that always had a megaphone yelling at me, and I'd grab it every time and throw it. It was one of those little cheap plastic things, right? I'd yell in his face and I'd throw it. That's something you look forward to. And then when they're not there, like this guy was an older guy, like you legitimately worried, like, I hope he's okay. You know, his health wasn't great. So those are the places where that's where the stories come in for those people that are there month after month. But as far as like a traveling story that's weekly, that doesn't really happen.
Right. So that does make the long-term storytelling more difficult to do, though, right? Because of that aspect.
Yeah, unless you just say it's strictly because it takes longer to get a short-term arc over because you're once a month. But yeah, for a long term, it's hard to do. Now the other promotion that I was with, they ended up in the last, I want to say 2 or 3 years, they've been doing weekly. They got a new school where they train and they can fit people in. So they do like every Thursday night they do a show. So they get to have, storylines and everything. But beforehand, when I was there, like it was just once a month. So yeah, makes it difficult.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I just want you guys to know I'm going to shoot him a question that was not pre-done. All right, so if he looks into the camera like, oh my gosh, that's probably the reason here, right? So I know that in baseball and football and stuff like that, we have talent scouts. They go to games, they look at people and they're like, oh yeah, we need to sign this guy, or this guy's better than what we initially thought, or stuff like that. Do you guys have, or did you guys have scouts that would come from maybe WWE or AEW, or even groups like Major League Wrestling? Because I actually like Major League Wrestling. I watch it some. Or TNA or something like that would come to your shows and do nothing but scout people and things like that.
As far as purely scouting, rarely did that ever happen. They might stop by a show because one of their friends was on the show and they've seen somebody and they might, recommend them. But a lot of times how it happens is just kind of word of mouth, right? You end up working somebody that, like, let's say I had a match with you and I had to tie in with somebody that was at the office in MLW.
Okay.
Well, you did great. Like, we went through everything. It wasn't me carrying the match. Whatever I want to say that was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Say, hey, Michael, I'm gonna talk to so and so from MLW if you're interested. And heck yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
So then,
Right.
you give them a call or whatever. Then now, before you know it, you might be going to wrestle on the pre-show, or you might be they'll give you a match on the show, just a tryout kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's usually how it works as far as getting into the next tier, right? As far as just being on any other show, that's what it is. You work with somebody and they put a word in for you, or the promoter themselves, right? Some promoters don't just promote, they wrestle, right? And on weekends that they are not promoting a show, they're out working, they're out wrestling, and that's how they grow the roster. Like, I saw this guy from the show I was on two weeks ago, and he was free this weekend, so I told him to come to my show. I'd give him a spot.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of federations out here in Arizona that I see stuff on my social media. I've never been to one of their shows, because usually I work the weekends. But
Right.
I'll see it and be like, oh man, I should really go. I should see what they've got going on. I'm interested. I'm intrigued, but I never go to those shows. Travis, somebody who's been involved in all of that, how do you get someone like me who was on the fence to actually attend the show?
That's the $1 million question. So, you try to, a lot of events in this area, a lot of promoters will try to do like some kind of a special, like a buy one, get one ticket, or like a fan appreciation night, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there is, you get, like, all of us wrestlers, we would work it for free just to help the product out. And it could be argued that some were effective, some weren't, obviously, but the biggest thing is just putting on a solid show and making sure that, you know, you don't have those people that show up and wrestle in jeans and, uh, you know, Craftsman boots or whatever, and come out and people that know what they're doing, right? If you can put on a quality show, the people will come. And
Okay. So it's the fields of dreams of wrestling then.
right. So it's just consistency is key. And if you can put on a good show, the people will come, and, you know, a name helps. If you bring in a name, I think a good formula is like, if you have the money and you're starting out, if you can bring in a name, doesn't have to be like an A-list celebrity kind of person, but you can bring somebody in and then back it up with a good product, right? You might get, if you get 60% of the people to come back at some point, that could be a win, right? So,
Yeah, sure.
you know, do what you got to do there. And eventually, like I know with Elite, eventually they kind of stop bringing names in because the show that they put on is a quality product that gets 300 or 400 people out, and they don't have to fork out a couple $1,000s or more for any talent,
Yeah.
right?
Understood. So I know that with Elite, you got better and better. You stayed with them for the long term. And then they started asking your opinion and they started getting stuff from you. So I'm sure you pitched a storyline or two. Have you done that before? And then give me kind of an example of something that you pitched, whether it got accepted or not.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, you're always pitching stuff. That's part of I think growing as a wrestler is in the beginning, you know, you're less is more again kind of thing. Just
Hmm.
step back and listen. But once you reach that certain point and you get a feel for what you're doing and you understand the psychology of everything, you start going to the promoter and saying like, "Hey, you know, what if we do this for a finish, or can I add the can we do a match?" Right? And the more you start going and presenting those different things, that it gets and they get accepted, like you can start going and kind of sharing. But um, as far as a whole like yes, I've been able to do that. And you know, like I said earlier, have the promoter would ask me, "Hey, who do you want to work?" And the probably the last storyline that I did, I won the championship. And that night he was like, "Be thinking about some whoever knew I knew who I hadn't worked yet, and that I really wanted to work, and I wanted him to be the one to take the title off of me." And I told him, I'm like, "Hey, this is what I want to do." And he was like, "That's good. Okay." You know, just based off of who it was. And he said, "I can see
Hmm.
him taking the title off of you." So I said, "All right, well, you know, he's got a faction with him. Give me a couple shows where I'll work whoever you want me to work. But then we're gonna build into, you know, this guy wants the belt and he's gonna send some members of his faction my way. I'll go through a couple of them, and eventually it'll just lead to me versus him, right? And then maybe I sneak out with the victory in the first time, right? It's very 50-50. I get the victory the first time because at this point I was the good guy, right? So then as the
Okay.
bad guy, he complains and whines and everything until he
Hmm.
forces me to accept or to challenge him because I'm the good guy, right? I'm gonna be the one that's taking the initiative. So he finally gets to me enough, whatever he does, that I accept the challenge or I challenge him, and you know we're off to the races. And then he ends up winning, whether it's clean or because of his guy or whatever. So you know, as far as detailed, it wasn't detailed at that point, but it was the overall arc, right? The kind of the outline of the whole idea that, you know, if you get a little bit of respect, you can start doing that kind of stuff, and yeah, it's got to make sense. And then the promoter will put in their own 2 cents with it, but um, yeah, those kind of things are fun. As far as stuff that's not gotten approved, like everybody probably has more of that than what gets approved, and then it varies whether it's, you know, something you want in your match, you know, spot you want in your match, or just, hey, what if we did this and it could, you know, let's do a smoz finish here, or if I cheat and win, then we can go into next month and we can have a gimmick match or whatever, you know, nothing long term usually, but those are the kind of things that get shot down because the promoter's like, oh, I got a plan, you know, we already want to do this or whatever. But um, it's a fine line because the promoter can't say, okay, everybody tell me what you want to do, right? So
Right.
um, to get that spot, it's cool to have that spot and to have that respect. But you also got to understand that everything you pitch isn't going to be approved. Right? And some people get mad when their stuff's not approved. And they're like, man, I'm like, yeah, but what about the last two things that, went your way? Like, but that's just people in general, right?
Of course, everybody wants to be approved, right? Everybody wants
Right.
that approval, 100%. So let me give you something. Let me give you a couple of examples from what we're watching right now, and let's kind of equate it back to the Indies and see if we can connect some dots here. See if we can, round everything up. I was very disappointed, like extremely disappointed, when the box opened up and it was not Chris Jericho. I love Jericho. To me, Jericho was on my Mount Rushmore. That's how much I really like Jericho, and I'll tell you the main reason why. The main reason why is that he's known his role all throughout his career, and he's reinvented himself 2 or 3 times really well throughout his career. And you're talking about working people, right? Which, for those of you who don't know the term, that's basically you go in and you have a good match with them, but the goal of the entire match is for the other person to look better. So I wanted Chris Jericho to come back to WWE and be that guy who would work people. I was kind of hoping that CM Punk was going to be that guy when he came back into WWE to come in and not necessarily say, hey, I'm CM Punk and I need to be on top. I was hoping he was going to come back in and say, hey, I'm CM Punk. I've got the name. I'm going to help you get closer to the top. That's not really happened yet. Maybe it will, but it's not really happened yet, in my opinion. What do you? So when you look at wrestlers and you know that they're not necessarily going to win, but how important is it to you as a fan to watch them and go, oh, I know exactly what they're doing, and they're putting over this new talent? How important is that, Trav?
I mean, I think it's pretty important to understand, right? When it comes to, again, this is an instant gratification generation, no matter what way you slice it, and it gets worse and worse because of social media and phones and all that kind of stuff. But if you can sit there and understand, like, okay, this didn't happen because maybe they're building this, right? And then the question becomes, where are they going, and not why aren't they where I want them to be? So then you get to enjoy it by guessing what might come next, right? So you're not putting yourself in a spot like with the Chris Jericho thing. And I told a bunch of people, and somewhere in the archives, I think it's me telling Ernie at one point too, that like Jericho is still on the AEW roster page. And I was like, AEW might be a lot of things, but they're not going to allow one of their biggest stars to still be on the roster page and show up at whatever show that was. That's it.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So something's there. I don't know for sure, but I would like to think that, right? But we, as the internet wrestling community, I think we doom ourselves a lot because with stuff like that. Nobody ever said, right? AEW never said that Chris Jericho was gone, right? We just assumed that, hey, this was when his contract was supposed to be up. He hasn't been to AEW, even though it's because he's on tour. He's going to show up at WrestleMania or whatever. And that's good. That's cool because that's us talking about wrestling, and that's what we want, right? But you got to be okay when what you think is going to happen doesn't happen, right? It's okay to be wrong. Right. It's okay to be surprised. But in that instance, you've made it one of the greatest is going to pop out of this box. So you're disappointed with anything less than, and there's only so many people that could pop out of the box that's on the level of Chris Jericho, right? And most of them are there. So it's overhyping something and then not feeling like it lived up to the hype. Because to be fair, devil's advocate here, WWE never once did anything to make you think it was going to be really anything special. The box showed up.
They didn't have Raw, to.
Showed up on SmackDown. They didn't sign for it. And then it was Danhausen, right? They never said like, oh, it's going to be a big surprise pop out of this box or whatever. So we did that, right? We did that to ourselves. So I think we got to be careful when we do that, because then we end up crapping on whatever happens instead of sitting back and saying, okay, I don't understand Danhausen or whatever. And well, it wasn't Jericho. Let's see what they do. Right. Because look here, come WrestleMania, which was like 7 or 8 weeks later, he was one of the top 3 selling merchandise of the weekend. But if you'd ask anybody that first night, he was the death of WWE, because it wasn't Chris Jericho and it wasn't The Rock.
That's right. But I
So,
mean, I was in that boat too, right? I was hyping myself. I was so convinced it was going to be Jericho, right? I was looking for reasons. Like I froze the picture of the box. Like, okay, his initials are here somewhere, or something, right?
which is cool.
Because I
Like, it's
wanted it to
awesome
happen that bad.
right, and it's awesome to do that as a fan, to be involved like that, right? But we just got to be careful to not allow ourselves to be disappointed by the outcome when we. And I get it. That's human nature, and you're not going to be happy with everything that happens, and that's fine. Like, I didn't expect Danhausen at all. I'll be honest. I didn't know
Mhm.
what to expect, but I would have never said Danhausen, and it was kind of like, oh, okay. The crowd went mild, right? Nobody really did
Yeah.
anything, but part of that was because everybody thought it was going to be Chris Jericho, and the other part was that most of the WWE audience probably don't even know who Danhausen is as
Was,
far
yep.
as pre WWE. But yeah, I I just that to me is where we just gotta be careful as fans, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm not sitting here trying to say that I can sit back and not get mad at anything, but that was one case where I was like, I don't think that's what it is, and you guys are going to be disappointed when it's not. Um, but again, that's the fun of being a fan, right? We're allowed to be disappointed. We're allowed to be wrong,
Yeah.
because somewhere along the line we're going to be right, and we're going to be extra happy that we predicted it the right way.
Right. And I'm going to shout that one as long and as loud as I can, right?
Right, right.
Yes, no, not a problem there. So, I mean, but I have to say though, I really like the Danhausen character. I
Yeah.
like how they're involving him backstage, um, and even he has evolved a little bit. If you remember, when he had the teeth with him all the time, like he did in AEW, and that's pretty much gone. If you look at the outfit, it's changed a little bit. There's no teeth down on the outfit if you look at the last couple 3 weeks. So they're even taking his character and modifying it a little bit. But I have to say, he's going to have a match on Backlash. And I think a lot of us are like, oh, well, he better have a good match or this character is going to be over, right? Because we all know that those characters have a shelf life.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how long he can do it and keep that shelf life up.
I think whoever his partner is going to be somebody that helps him win it. And so, whatever happens won't necessarily fall back on his lack or not lack of ability. That's not how you say that, but it won't fall back on his ability in a good way or a bad way. But, do you really expect Danhausen to go out and have a 5-star match? No. It's just going to be what the
can't
shelf
crap
life.
the bed either.
Right. Oh, yeah. And the shelf life is going to come from getting tired of the same old shtick of the "you are cursed" thing and all the backstage segments and everything. So right now, I think it's a strike of lightning that they're riding. Right, they're riding the streak of lightning until the wheels fall off, and that's fine. But I think at points they're kind of overexposing him. Once a week on the television is okay, but 3 or 4 or 5, like you're making that shelf life even less because people are going to start getting tired of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, he can't go out there and look like an idiot in the ring, right? He can only play it as part of his, right. He can only play it as part of his gimmick for so long. But the whole idea of any wrestling gimmick is that, like, even like an Orange Cassidy, right? He's ridiculous, but at least he can actually go, right? And Danhausen can wrestle, but it's how believable can he be while still being the gimmick, I guess. But I think he's one of those things where he's one of the smartest men in wrestling because he gets over like this without ever having to take a bump.
Yeah, it is pretty smart, actually.
Yeah.
Coming from a guy who's, I'm sure, taking a ton of bumps to try to get over, or has gotten over with them, or didn't get over with them, however it ended up going, the bump still hurts, right?
Everything.
Yeah, the bump still hurts. So let's do this real quick. I'm not 100% sure when this show is going to air because we're kind of piecing this together a little bit, and that's completely my fault as far as production end of this part goes. But I'm going to tell you who I think his tag team partner is going to be. Would you like to participate along with me and tell me who you think his tag team partner is going to be?
Sure, I can conjure up somebody.
Okay, so let me conjure up this. I don't want it to be this, but I think this is where we're headed. I think it's going to be Jelly Roll.
I would not be surprised if that's exactly who it was. I think another way to get a celebrity involved, and that's very possible. I think if it's a wrestler, it's going to be, it's not going to be anybody major, right? It's not going to be Like it's not like The Rock's going to come back to do that. So
Right.
could be a legend, or could be an NXT guy come up or whatever. But I can't think of anybody that has any history with him that it could be. The history really is CM Punk, and it's not going to be CM Punk. But I think probably the safest bet would actually be Jelly Roll.
You were supposed to give me somebody controversial or somebody else. I mean, that's
I
kind of a
don't.
letdown, Trev.
I know it's.
Of course, I also didn't prep you with this question beforehand, to where you could find out and think about it for a minute. But
it's kind of a good angle because who knows? It probably could be somebody that I guess Miz, and probably more so the Miz has history with than anybody, more than even Kit Wilson. But that still goes to Jelly Roll because the Kit.
Mm-hmm. Kit Wilson, by the way, one of the better intro musics in WWE right now. I love it. So yeah, just these little things. I mean, that's important, right, Trev? When you the whole package is what's important. It's not just what the guy can do in the ring. It's not just he can be a high flyer. I mean, Evans right now, probably one of the best looking high flyers, new kids coming in. I really thought he was going to get the Intercontinental Championship at Mania, where he didn't, and I was a little disappointed, to be honest. But I don't know if that's WWE saying pump the brakes. We did this with Finn Balor, by the way. We brought him in the very first night, gave him the championship. He got hurt in that match, and he has just, in my opinion, not been the same guy since.
No.
So maybe they don't want to do that to him, but it's everything, right? You got to have good music. You have to have the presence. You have to be able to talk on the mic. You have to be able to wrestle in the ring, and that's where we start getting these Mount Rushmore guys. And there's just not very many of those guys in this business that can do all of that.
You're exactly right. Like you have to, you can get to the dance and not be a total package, but to get to that next level where you're a household name, right, and you're multiple time world champion and whatnot, you kind of have to be able to talk, back it up, and if you got something memorable about your song, like Austin with the glass breaking, or The Rock, smell what the Rock is cooking, or Cody Rhodes even when the lights go out and whatever it is, like it's all part of the package. And people are going to sing and that's one of the best evolutions ever in wrestling, is how fans will sing people's entrance music. I love it. Right. It's really cool. But the most important obviously is being able to wrestle and being able to talk on the microphone, because if you can't connect with the audience, it doesn't matter really what your music is. Right. But again, it does help, especially if fans are going to start singing, right? And look at and I hate to even do this because I hate being negative at all, but think of a Jey Uso. He got the world title, and it's really because of what appears to be just the yeet, right? Yep. He was able to do that.
Oh, from another indie wrestler, by the way.
Right. That he was able to get over, and the fans loved him, and he sold merchandise, and the WWE saw that and said, okay, we're going to give you a chance. And unfortunately, his promo skills just aren't there, which is fine. I mean, he's a great tag team, whatever. And there's nothing wrong with him as a person, but you can't be the world champion that's supposed to draw people in when you're just standing in the ring talking, and have that big of a disconnect. So, and that's honestly, that's the killer of most guys, is their ability to cut a promo. I wasn't the best promo guy, right? But without doing that, you can connect with people on the indies and not be the best promo guy. But once you get higher and higher, right, you got to be better and better. And it's just that aura. That's like the word of the year or whatever. But just having that aura about yourself and drawing people in that way, the charisma. Again, that's what does it.
All right, so if I gave you free front row tickets to a TNA spot, an AEW, or a WWE, and it was a non-televised event, we'll talk about how that's different, and you can only choose one, which non-televised event would you choose and why?
I'm going to have to say...
Or if you want to throw in another production, by the way, if you want to throw in ML, Major League Wrestling or any of those things, feel free.
I'm going to say AEW because really, televised or non-televised, you're going to get the best bang for your buck as far as professional wrestling goes. They put on like a pay-per-view quality card almost every week as far as wrestlers. Are they the most known people? Not necessarily, but they go out there and they put on pretty intense matches, right? Uh, so if I'm wanting to see professional wrestling, I'll do that. Like I went to SmackDown a few weeks ago, and out of the 3.5 hours I was there was 5 matches. Or look at WrestleMania, right? In 2 days, there was less matches than there was in one AEW show, or less time. It's not about the number, but it's about the amount of time that there's wrestling. So AEW focuses heavy on their pro wrestling product. WWE, of course, is very much entertainment. And that's fine when it's not just random commercials, right? I didn't watch WrestleMania for Domino's commercials, but but so to me, that's who I would pick personally. I've never been to one. That's the other part of the reason it's kind of on the list of wanting to go. But now pay-per-view, I think still the same thing, AEW, just because where I'm at in life, I want to see that wrestling match, right? And WWE is still their style is more generic, cookie cutter, like the stuff that they'll allow and they won't allow, and the structure of the match is very much the same. But I gotta go AEW.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all right with that. I probably don't watch it yet. Well, it's not. There's no probably. I don't watch AEW too much. I tried to get back into TNA. So I'm gonna again a question that's not on script right at the moment. I'm gonna ask you kind of extra here. Is there anyone who's ever went to and I'm going to tell you my own preference here, and then I'll ask you the same question, right? So there is a group. They're called the Righteous, and they are now in TNA. I like their theme song. I like the character that they've got. I like the whole and so for those of you who know, right? So
Right.
If you've seen it, I really like that entire package. So I hadn't watched TNA in a long time. In fact, I didn't even realize they went back to, or not back, but they went to AEW, not AEW, I'm sorry, AWC, right? Or AMC.
Yeah, AMC.
And I was like, oh, wow. So I can get this for free now. I don't have to pay for this. And that's a big thing for me because I'm cheap. So I started recording some TNA episodes just to get back into it a little bit and seeing what kind of product they had. Have you, Trav, ever had someone who you're like, oh, well, they're going to be on the show, or they're going to, kind of like what we were talking about when a big name comes into an independent scene? Have you ever had something like that on one of the bigger brands, and you're like, oh, I've got to watch this pay-per-view because that person's going to be on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fan and anybody is going to have that kind of thing happen. For me, just nostalgia is a big thing, obviously, right now. So having any kind of real comeback of somebody that was like when when Austin came back for his match at WrestleMania, right? I knew it wasn't going to be a great match, but I was like, I can't miss this. Him and Kevin Owens, right? That kind of thing.
It ended up being a pretty good match, actually, especially because they were limited.
Way more than what I would have expected, but
and I want Kevin Owens back, just so we're all clear about that too, by the way.
Yes, please. So yeah, that kind of thing really drives you to watch. So, and I'm to the point where it's hard for me to watch every single wrestling event every week, right?
Yeah, me too.
You got literally 5 days a week. Some weeks are 6 days a week where you can watch wrestling. Actually, every week, 6 days. Some of them 7, right? Depending on if the pay-per-view's on a Sunday or not. So,
right.
What's going to get me to watch is if there's an advertisement for a certain match or somebody's going to be there. That'll definitely probably make me watch that over another night of the week. But
okay, so then right now, Trav, what are you actually watching? What are you watching consistently right now?
I pretty consistently watch Raw, and I try to watch Dynamite as much as possible. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is spring with a whole bunch of different sports seasons going on and having, a family. It's, that's all over the place. But yeah, Raw and AEW. SmackDown, I see some of, but again, I think I play kind of like your game where it's a lot of just watching the reruns of shorts, right, on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah,
And
I do it a lot.
yeah, and that helps. You're gonna be able to follow the storyline by doing that, right? So
Mhm.
that helps. But yeah, I try to at least tune into a little bit of each. But
Yeah, and
AEW, I'm
I think
never gonna miss an
WWE.
AEW pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I think WWE realizes that right now too, because most of the time they produce the stuff that I watch. That's
Yeah,
a shorter version of their 3 hour SmackDown that I don't
yeah,
want to. I don't want to give 3 hours a night to SmackDown. I just don't. And you probably know this already. They're reducing SmackDown back down to 2 hours,
yeah,
at least for a little while. They're still talking about going back to 3 hours, but they've got this thing between them. They've got so much talent right now, and they're
yeah,
obviously paying these people so much. They can't squeeze everybody into 2 hours, but it's too much, I think, for the fans to go, okay, well, I'm going to watch 3 hours on Monday and 3 hours on Friday, and then I'm going to tune into your NXT product on Tuesday, and there's a pay-per-view on Saturday. And yeah, so I think they're caught in this middle ground right now where they're
yeah.
not sure what to do.
And it comes back to like when I was talking about Danhausen, like oversaturating the character, the gimmick. I think we live in a world where that's almost happened with professional wrestling because it's on 6 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you fix that is you don't have, very rarely do you have somebody that sits down and watches everything, right? So I think each show needs to stick to what's true to them and what starts getting them fans. Like AEW, I think starting to grow a little bit, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna hit their ceiling if they haven't already, just based off of it just being a strictly pro wrestling. I mean, look at like NWA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, like they were all about wrestling, and that's only going to get you a niche part of the audience, right? The
Right.
reason WWE is bigger and mainstream is because it's focusing on the entertainment. But even with WWE in itself, right, you got Raw that does one thing. It really, Raw and SmackDown are very similar now, and it's like the same people. So like once
Mm-hmm.
they separate themselves, then you're going to have people that pick the show that they want to watch, and that's okay. But they can't expect this one person to watch everything, right? So, and I think they're trying really hard to make that happen by having one person be on every show. But I think that's just something that they got to understand. And as fans, you got to be careful not to burn yourself out, right?
Mm-hmm. And I did watch NWA a little bit over the I think it was yesterday or day before, and it had nothing to do with the wrestling. Actually, I don't know if you saw or not. Trevor Murdoch retired in ring,
Yes,
so I was
that,
like,
yeah.
oh, okay, I need to see this. Yeah, so that was something that drew me to them, and it had nothing to do with wrestling, even though wrestling is kind of what they're known for.
Right.
So yeah, it just kind of depends on what draws you from point A to point B. So right the moment you're taking a break from performing, and you've picked up a new passion, and that's we've been building to this. This is really like long-term storytelling right here, Trav. We've been building to this for like an hour and 10 minutes now. So you're taking a break from performing, and you've picked up another passion. So tell me what that passion is.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I guess I fell and hit my head too many times. My passion now is this podcasting. I love it, sitting behind the screen and taking my experiences and taking what I watch on TV and trying to relate different things and show a little bit of a behind the scenes of the business when I can, right? What I can speak to, right? And along with the history of it, right? So that's just something that's clicked to me, right? Clicked with the coach in me or the teacher in me, and it's just something that's honestly, I'm enjoying that more than I was wrestling there towards the end. And it was just time for a break after 15 years straight. It was just one of those things. My shoulders and my back and my knees are a lot happier right now that I'm doing this. But
yeah, 15 years is a long time, man.
Yeah. And I never would have expected, for the longest time, I was looking for somebody to podcast with because I figured it'd be easier than just sitting there and talking by myself. Mm-hmm. And when that finally happened and I pulled the plug to do it, or pulled the trigger, I should say, pulling the plugs when you stop something. When I pulled the trigger to start it, we just never looked back. And now I'm honestly, any free time I have, I'm working on a script or working on recording or trying to figure out what I can do to get more views on YouTube or whatever it is that's just related to that, right? So I'm bad in that whenever I take something on, that when that becomes my focus, I'm dangerous. Like that's now I'm here. What am I doing? I'm gonna figure it out. So, but yeah, as far as why podcasting, that was just something I ended up falling in love with, and never would have seen myself doing. But ordered a mic, and so now I'm a podcaster.
All right, fantastic. Now, it's something that I really enjoy too, so I'm right there with you. We and myself and a few other guys, we own this company called All Gloves Off Sports Media, and now you're going to be able to see Trav and his buddy. We'll talk about here in just a moment, and their show, Cheap Pop Society, is now going to be right here on All Gloves Off Sports Media. We love them. I saw his show, and I actually went to him. This is not something to where he's like, oh, hey, I want to go to the next level and you guys are the next level. I just happened to come across this podcast, watched it 4 or 5 times, said, oh, this guy's got something special. I like this. And then we have been talking for the last month or so. And I believe next week or thereabouts, he is going to debut his show, Cheap Pop Society, right here on All Gloves Off Sports Media. We talked about your buddy. Let's talk about him. His name's Ernie. Tell me a little bit more about Ernie, how you describe him and what he brings to your show, Trav.
So Ernie, as far as we call him Grandma, or a lot of times.
That was so weird, but it freaked me out the first time I watched the show, and you were calling him Grandma, by the way.
And I don't even really know where that came from. That was just what. So we used to have Evie on the show as well, and she introduced me to him. Kind of like she was like kind of the middle person of it. So. Mm-hmm. That was where Grandma came from, and I've never, for whatever reason, asked where that came from. But anyway, what he brings a fan perspective, a long-term fan. And he's like an encyclopedia. Like I'll say something, he's just like, oh, it's this, and there's a date and all that kind of thing. And he's a great guy that isn't afraid to share his opinion, and he'll give it to you straight.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, you've got kind of more of the coaching side aspect of it. You can do a little behind the scenes stuff. And like you said, he's the fan. He's been watching it forever. And I'm sure you guys kind of have difference of opinion sometimes on different subjects, right?
Yeah, and we love doing that. So a lot of times we'll do episodes where we try to come up with 5 of our favorite whatever. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we do agree. So that doesn't make things too entertaining. But when we don't agree, we get to go into our reasons why, and we really get to get into the weeds. And for whatever reason, that's what I like to do. And I think that's part of, what any podcaster likes to do, because we're doing this because we want to share how we feel. And if we're doing it the right way, I think the right mindset, we want to hear what other people have to say as well. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I don't live in a world where my opinion's the only one that counts, and I know that. So,
well, I do.
I want to hear, I want to hear what everybody thinks, and then I can tell them why I think mine's the right way. But
so then, Trav, what do you expect to accomplish, or what do you want to accomplish by doing Cheap Pop Society here on All Gloves Off Sports Media?
So originally, we just started off as just, hey, we're going to be 2, at the time 3 people just sitting down talking wrestling and see where it goes. And that has got way more traction than we thought it ever would. And when you reached out, we're just like, it seems the natural next step to be able to keep growing. And, we hope that it's a mutual thing, right? I don't think that I don't want to look at it as, you're completely helping us or we're completely helping you. Obviously, it's one of those things where it's a partnership, and we grow together. And the fact that you reached out meant a lot to us, and we appreciate it. And we're just kind of strapped to the rocket to see where it takes us, right? If you want to call it a rocket, whatever you want to call it, a little firecracker, we'll see where we get to. But we've done nothing but grow, and I would have never thought whenever we started this that 5 people would have listened to it, but here we are.
Yeah, so you're talking about growing, right? I'll shout you out if you're not going to pat yourself on the back. It's going to be hard for me to do it from Arizona to West Virginia, but I'll do the best I can here. You guys have grown just on YouTube a couple 300 people, subscribers in just the last week or two, right? I mean, I want to say that it's because we've announced this a couple of weeks ago that you were coming on board with us. It's
Maybe.
probably not the case. And like you said, you probably did get some traction from that, but I know you got some traction from the Benoit stuff that you just did. Fantastic stuff. For those of you who have not checked it out, by the way, go over to Cheap Pop Society and check out his him and Ernie stuff on Benoit. And so you guys have grown over. You got up over the 400 subscribers on YouTube spot now. Great, seriously, great job by you. You've got more than what we do. So fantastic. I appreciate being on board with someone who knows they can grow. That brings me to this, Trav. I know you guys have two different shows. Why two shows? And tell me what the difference is between them.
So we have obviously Cheap Pop Society we have, and that comes with multiple episodes per week, but we haven't actually dropped any episodes yet of the other one. That's the Art of Nothing is what we're going to call it. And it's going to be kind of geared towards like a true crime mystery kind of deal, but also various different topics. We might have like True Crime Month, and then it could be like mental health stuff, like that kind of thing. So we're just kind of in the process of really honing in exactly what it is that we want it to be. And anybody we talk to they're really kind of helping us gear, where that's going to go to. But we're hoping to we're supposed to this Wednesday actually start recording on that, starting off with a very true crime and horror kind of centered to it. And then see where we go from there. So that's just another one of my passions. I've always been a fan of horror movies and just crime and that kind of thing, so that's our other one. But I think my true baby is, of course, Cheap Pop Society. And just because I've lived a lot of what I talk about, right? I don't just say it because I read it somewhere. I say it because my body hurts because I did it. And, and that helps. And having somebody that knows the business as much as Ernie along the way, and anybody else that we have on there, it helps, right? And so if you ask why listen to us, there's a little bit of experience there, and there's a lot of, we're just like you guys, and here's what we think. Tell us what you think, right? We'll have you on the show if you want to get on, like, what I mean? Like
I'm going to put myself on the show, whether you want me to or not. I'm just going to show up sometime, be like, hey,
pop in.
Yeah, just pop in. So, I would, just so everybody knows, I'll probably be on a future show because I'm just as big a wrestling guy as anybody else is. I'll wait till something I really, really, really want to talk about is going on right at the moment. But, you and Ernie go back and forth really well. You guys play off each other really nice. And then you've got that aspect of behind the scenes. Ernie has the aspect of being a guy who's sat in ringside seat. And, you see it from a little bit different perspective than he does, but you guys both see the same show. So it is really good. And it's really interactive. I love how that all folds out. And it's what I liked about your show and why we brought you on board with All Gloves Off Sports Media. So you've got two different shows. You've got a great host. You've got a really good style as far as that goes. So when the fan is done with your show, I'm going to equate this back to a live show, right? Or to a pay-per-view. When a fan is done, I think that WWE has more of a center towards, okay, we're going to give you a moment. We've heard that several times within WWE now. I want to give you a viral moment, right? Whether it involves Logan Paul or I Show Speed or Jelly Roll or somebody like that. When the average fan, Trav, is done watching Cheap Pop Society, what do you want them to take away? How do you want them to feel after the show is done?
I think a lot of time, what I want them to feel is educated. I think would be a good way to put it. They might not necessarily know a lot about professional wrestling, but what I try to do throughout whatever our topic is give a little bit of backstory and fill in the blanks for them. Right? We try not to step over anybody's head as far as using terms that they wouldn't know, but not even really terms, but just like talking about something and then not kind of covering what it was. Right? We don't expect anybody to know what the Chris Benoit incident, right, that we just did an episode on. We wouldn't just gloss over something like that necessarily without trying to make sure that people could follow. because we know, especially now, we're going to get more, probably just sports fans checking it out to see what's going on. And, I think that they'll be able to relate to the history aspect of it and the breaking it down, right? Any sports fan loves to sit down and break down stuff, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
usually it's stats, right? And not a storyline or whatever. But, when you can relate, like I'll probably do an episode about just putting together a match at some point where you get to sit down and you look at it again, it's psychology. How do we keep everybody interested? I think that's stuff that sports fans could, get into. We're breaking down that the whole shebang at some point, right? So
Mhm.
I think that again, as far as the sports people go, they can relate to the educational side of it and the checking out some of the different stats and all the stuff that we kind of go over.
Okay, so knowing all this, we're going to wrap this up here. Hopefully we'll be done here in just a few minutes. I got like 2 or 3 more questions with Trav. I want which guys to really be able to know who he is and what's going on with him and Cheap Pop Society and Ernie and everything else before they debut here on All Gloves Off Sports Media. So, Trav, what do you think across all of the federations right at the moment? What's the best either storyline going, or what's the best character that one of these companies has going right now? And you can't use Danhausen. We've already talked about him.
Honestly, I absolutely love MJF. I think MJF is the best heel in professional wrestling right now because he's not afraid to. You don't know when he's MJF or when he's himself, right? He'll appear on a random podcast, but he's in character, out of character, in character, and he's either really a jerk or you know he's trying to keep this new school kayfabe alive, right? Um, but when it comes to wrestling, he can put on. I mean, he was just in like a 45-minute Texas Death match, or he can put on an hour Iron Man match where it's just wrestling, right? Good wrestling. So I think he's as close to the total package as it gets right now, and he's not afraid to. He puts in the work. Like he's transformed his body over the last couple years. So to me, that's my favorite thing going right now. As far as WWE goes, I really enjoy a lot of different things about it. But my favorite recently was like the Bloodline storyline. Of course, it's over now. I think that really got me behind
I'm not
Roman
sure if it
Reigns.
is, but okay.
Right. Well, the height of it's over, I should say. But that kind of got me into Roman Reigns. But some of the storylines lately have been a little off. Like I feel like the only reason that Roman Reigns and CM Punk fought was because Roman Reigns called CM Punk old. And on SmackDown, you have the Gingerbread Man getting the X thrown up. So like some wacky stuff. Also, if people that say, "Oh, it's not the Attitude Era," go back and look at the Attitude Era. That kind of stuff would happen back then too. So, it's just it was kind of offset, I guess. But anyway, yeah, MJF.
Okay, that's interesting. I love MJF. It's probably him and Samoa Joe probably one of the few reasons why I would now Jericho's back.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to creep more into AEW a little bit. But it'll be one of those things where I won't sit down and watch a 2 or 3 hour show. It'll be another one of those things where I go on YouTube and it's like, okay, give me 15 minutes of this or give me 10 minutes of that. So yeah, but even at that though, Trav, that I haven't watched AEW in probably 2 years. So if I watch 15-minute clips of it 3 times a week, that's 45 more minutes that I wasn't watching it before. Right. So they are bringing you in. It's just how are they bringing you in, right? Different ways. And that's one of the reasons why we like going diversity here. So we've got baseball, we've got football on All Gloves Off Sports Media. Now we've got professional wrestling, and we may bring in more wrestling shows. Actually, I'm not trying to get you to go, oh no, you can't bring in another wrestling show, but I'm actually looking at another wrestling show right now. We'll talk about it off air a little bit because I want you to look at it too, and we'll figure out what we want to do here. So last thing, Trav, give me a preview. So we've got somebody that's watching this right now who's never seen you, who didn't know anything about Cheap Pop Society, who can't wait for this to be over, and they're going to go right to your YouTube page and check everything out, right?
Hope
so give us a sense of a few things that you have done and give us a sense of what you're going to do in the next few weeks so we can be looking forward to some things, Trev.
So a lot of what we do, especially on the long episodes coming out every Friday, we'll break down a little bit of what's going on now, and then we inevitably have a topic that's either a behind the scenes kind of deal with wrestling, or was a major incident that happened. Like we had one episode that was just breaking down kayfabe. We had one episode that was just talking about the whole idea behind letting it play out as far as storylines go. Like, what's that look like? You develop this and you let it play out. Do you take twists and turns, or what do you do? And of course, recently we had Chris Benoit, which was the other style that we do. We at least once a week we'll try to do like a documentary style read of a podcast. And
Love those, by the way.
Thank you. And those are shorter and actually take a lot more work to put together. But
yes, they do.
They're fun, and that's the history side of it. So that's the kind of thing. We had one drop just this morning that talked about gimmicks that took over the wrestler, right? Where I talked about Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker, Mick Foley, and somebody else. I don't remember who I listed there, but four guys that their gimmicks kind of took over who they were, and talk about why that was. So, it was fun to break down the psychology behind it, and just go behind the scenes with wrestling and the different aspects of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up your spot here. That's what you heard my phone go off and everything. I'm over here like, okay, I can look this up real quick, and we can get the other wrestler.
Bray Wyatt.
Maybe I can't.
Ultimate Warrior, Bray Wyatt, Undertaker, and
that's the one.
That's what it was. I just had a Bray Wyatt there for those. Yeah. So
All
we
right,
go
fantastic.
into psychologically why, like, Ultimate Warrior, he honed in and focused and really became the warrior. Bray Wyatt had multiple different versions, right? You had the cult leader, you had the Fiend, you had the guy that was the kids talk show host, different kinds of things, and all of those could be real. And was there any was part of Bray Wyatt in that, right? Did he have, what part of him was in each of those gimmicks, and where did they overlap, right? That kind of deal. Mick Foley, he had all of the three faces of Foley, the Cactus Jack, Do Love, Mankind, and he was himself, and he was able to kind of keep them separate, right? And he embraced the fact that they were separate, and they all kind of had a piece of him in it too, and how that goes about. And then of course talk about the Undertaker really being in character his whole career, right? When he's outside of wrestling, he was able to just hone in and create the boundaries, but also be the Undertaker, and what that means. So it's a fun little twist on how to look at different things, and hopefully people enjoy it.
I can give you a little Bray Wyatt nugget here for just a second, and then we'll be done here, Trav. I appreciate you being with us here on the first episode of Average Joes with Sports Jobs. I think this is going to be a really nice thing to be able to sit down with people and learn a little bit more about them and why they do what they do. So I live here in Phoenix. If you remember correctly, I know if we had Ernie on here, he'd be pulling out times, dates, everything else for us. But Elimination Chamber, the first time Bray Wyatt won the World Heavyweight Championship, I was there. I was there live. Cool. So not only was I there live, but there was a group of us, a big group, probably 200, 250 people, who decided that we were going to wait outside the arena for Bray to come out, right? We knew, well, somebody knew which one of the buses was his, right? A lot of them bring their own motorhomes in because they live in that thing 24/7, right? So we knew which one was his. We got pretty close to it, and you could see the psychology of Bray Wyatt in action. He comes out. He's still in his get up. He didn't change and go into regular street clothes or anything like that. He's still in the Hawaiian shirt and the hat, and he's just, the only thing different is now he's got the belt thrown over his shoulder. Right. And he comes out, and we just start going absolutely crazy. And you could see, people were wanting his autograph, and people were, come here and speak to me, and please come. There was a barrier gate in between all of us, right? And it was like, what is he going to do? And you could look in his eyes, and he was kind of pondering, like, what in the world am I going to do right now? He can't possibly go talk to each and every one of these people and make them all happy, right?
Right.
There's just no way he can do that. So I'm like, okay, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? And I was really intrigued on what was he going to do. And it only took him 30 seconds, and he did something that made the entire place go absolutely bananas. So he drops to his knees like he did all the time when he does the follow the buzzards things. But he took the belt and rose that belt above his head when he fell down, and people went. He did that 30 seconds or so. Didn't say a word. Was just doing his little. I like to call it the cackle, and it wasn't really a laugh. It was more of a, more of that cackle laugh that we all. If you know Bray Wyatt, you know what I'm talking about. And that was it. People were happy with that. They all started clapping. They cheered for him. And then we basically just dispersed like, okay, we know that's all he's going to do. And we're happy with that. And it was a pretty neat moment for him to kind of put a lid on top of that night. And then he just, he got up and went to his mobile, his RV, and it was over. But it was a neat moment to be able to say, yeah, I was right behind that barrier when he did this at the end of that show where he won his first championship.
That's awesome. That a place in history that, you always be able to talk about. And, unfortunately with his untimely passing, it's adds even more to the mystique of Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Well, Travis, look, man, I appreciate you being here with us, Trav. I really do. I know you agreed to do this. You were the first one. You knew you were going to be the first one. Something I want to do every month. Not 100% sure how we're going to do this, if it's going to come out on the same date, if it's going to come out on like the third Friday, or exactly how all this is going to work. It's kind of a work in progress, but I appreciate you, sir, being part of this work in progress, just like Cheap Pop Society is. Tell us, sir, where can we get Cheap Pop Society besides here at All Gloves Off Sports Media?
All you got to do is hop on your Google machine, type in cheappopsociety.com, and it'll take you straight to our YouTube page, and that's where you'll find everything that you need to find. If you want a little bit more, you can go on over to Patreon and again type in Cheap Pop Society, and you'll see what we got for you over there.
All right, sounds great, man. It's you, it's Ernie, it's WWE, it's AEW, it's all kinds of other stuff too.
Everything professional wrestling. Nothing's off the table.
Nothing is off the table. I like it, buddy. Okay, so last thing I want to say is this. If for no other reason, I was going to have you bring it on board with you, but I decided not to because I want people who have never heard it before to go listen. I'm actually going to tell people to go listen for something than to go see something for a change on a YouTube channel. If nothing else, guys, go listen to the theme song for Cheap Pop Society. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So until you start seeing him on All Gloves Off Sports Media, once again, Trav, thank you very much. We'll stick with the same tagline that we do all the time, even though this is not baseball related. Ladies and gentlemen, Travis, Ernie, and everyone else that's out there that are big wrestling marks, here we go. The only thing that's fair in life is a baseball hit between the third and first base line. Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate you. Trav, hang on with me. We'll do an outro, and then I'll come back with you. All right, buddy?